Allah has entrusted each and every one of us with obligations and with things to be fulfilled. Also, as Muslims, we're supposed to fulfill the laws that Allah has revealed too. Whatever Allah tells us to stay away from, we're supposed to stay away from it. Oh, whatever Allah commands us to do, we're supposed to do it without question. But unfortunately, we're too ignorant to fulfill our trust. Listen to what one of the early scholars said. Everything that Allah has obligated upon his servants is a trust. So that means our prayers every day, our zakat, our fasting, the paying off of debts, wearing a hijab, growing a beard, these are all trusts that Allah has imposed upon us. But look how many of us don't live up to it. Look how many Muslim brothers like to post up their pictures on pages of women who are not their wives. You want to know why a da'i such as Laila Nasheeba will call you ugly? You ain't even got a beard on, brother. You got nothing coming here. You're not fulfilling your trust to Allah. So what makes you think that I'm going to be stupid enough to believe that you're going to fulfill your trust to me by marrying me with your ugly self? You see that? And remember, guys, the prophets, they were the best examples for us because they understood the meaning of trust. Allah tells us in the Quran, in the interpretation, the meaning, the Prophet Muhammad was sent to be a trustworthy messenger. He was a trustworthy messenger. We're supposed to be following his example in life. I tell you guys, as my students know, I tell you guys all the time, ask yourself, is this something that the Prophet would do if he were living? Is this something Aisha would do? How would the Prophet handle himself if he was in this situation? How would Aisha handle herself? How would Abu Bakr handle himself? We need to look to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam as our example. And then after him, his immediate companions, because they were the most righteous people that Allah created. They'll be the first to enter paradise. Ask yourselves, how would they conduct themselves if they were on Facebook, if they were on the internet, if they were at work? How would they conduct themselves if they were put in the situations that you're in with their husbands, their wives, their children, their friends, their neighbors? Also, guys, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, again, he's the best example of all because he was known amongst his people even before Islam as being a trustworthy one. For example, we have the hadith where one of the companions said that he asked Abu Jahl. He said, "Oh, Abu Jahl, did you ever accuse Muhammad of lying before he came as a messenger?" And Abu Jahl, who was the enemy of Allah, he looked at the person. He said, "O son of my sister, by Allah, while the Muhammad was young, he was called the trustworthy one by us. Even when he grew older, he would never tell a lie." So this companion asked Abu Jahl, the enemy of Allah, he said, "Then why come you won't follow him? If he's always been known as being a trustworthy, honest person, then why won't you follow him now?" And Abu Jahl said, "O son of my sister, we and the tribe of Hashim, we were always competing with one another to be the most noble, the most best. And now a prophet has arisen from us. How can we compete in being a prophet?" Astaghfirullah. So the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was always known as being trustworthy. He was always known as being honest. He didn't go around lying, guys. Also, the Prophet did not sugarcoat the religion. So many Muslims today are weak in their faith, weak in their knowledge of Islam. So many of you expect people to sugarcoat this religion, candy coat it for you, and put it to you on a platter. Not the true people of the Sunnah. The true people of the Sunnah, the true Sunnah followers, we do not sugarcoat, because neither did the Prophet. The Prophet would be as patient and as nice with you as he could be, but he would become a ferocious lion whenever anyone violated or transgressed the limits of Allah. So there's a limit. We do not sugarcoat Islam for you guys. You have to learn to accept Islam in its truthfulness. Whether you like it or not, whether you think it's harsh or not, you have to accept it in its truthfulness. Our way is a way of truth, guys, not a way of sugarcoating. And that's not how the Prophet was either. So many people today, they call themselves da'i or callers, and they do nothing but lie, because they're sugarcoating the religion. And astaghfirullah, the worst thing we can do as Muslims is to go around lying on Allah, lying on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Remember, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us that the signs of a hypocrite are three. Whenever he speaks, he lies. Whenever he makes an oath, he breaks it. And whenever he is given a trust, he betrays it. How many of you have components of hypocrisy about you? If you have one of these traits, then that means you have the characteristics of a hypocrite. If you have all of these traits, then you are a pure hypocrite. Some of you in this website right now are hypocrites. Be honest with yourself. You lie. You never keep your promise. And whenever somebody trusts you to take care of something, you break the trust. You betray that person. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, if a person has all three of these components, then that means even if he were to fast or pray or think he is a Muslim, he is not. He's still a hypocrite. How many of us here are hypocrites? Be honest with yourself. Focus on changing yourself. This is what I'm saying, guys. How do we keep the spiritualness of Ramadan going? By changing yourself, being honest with yourself. The believer doesn't have time for nonsense on Facebook. The believer doesn't have time for nonsense on the internet. The believer doesn't have time for nonsense anywhere because he's too busy changing himself to make himself more loving to Allah, not to the people. A lot of you want to change to impress people that you worship, when you should be worshiping none but Allah and only impressing Him. He loves truthfulness. Allah does not like a liar. He doesn't like a hypocrite. He doesn't like a person who speaks without knowledge. He doesn't like a person who's always betraying people and starting fitna, creating problems, dipping in other people's business. Allah doesn't like a person like that. You may, but not Allah. Change yourself. Change yourself to become what Allah does like, guys. Also, listen to what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in another authentic hadith. There is no faith for the one who has no trust, and there is no religion for the one who does not keep his promises. How many of you make promises to your children and you never come through? How many of you make them with each other, with yourselves, and don't come through? Why did I